Before we get into this episode of WAM, SAG-AFTRA, which is the Screen Actors Guild, has sent out a notice stating that any promotional work by digital creators for any movie, paid or not paid, would be considered going against the strike and would result in not being able to gain access to joining the Screen Actors Guild. We want to specify that WAM isn't a promotional thing. We are reviewers who don't necessarily try to get anybody to watch a movie, but we give our honest opinions on what we've watched. But to show that we are in solidarity with the Screen Actors Guild, Nick will be donating $100 to SAG later today.
What the fuck? I didn't know this.
$50?
Let's put a pin in that.
25?
It's just
12.5.
We can talk about that later.
6.25.
Really, it's
3.125.
Let's do a good 10. Like, I'll give him a dime. I could give him a dime.
Yeah. Okay. We will be giving a dime to the Screen Actors Guild later today. With that out of the way, this is Wham. I'm Nolan.
Hey, I'm Nick. Hi.
And we have recently watched Oppenheimer, which is one of the biggest movies that was set to come out this summer.
It's good. I really liked it.
I enjoyed
that movie. I was really nervous about the runtime because 3 hours is scary.
It was directly 3 hours.
Yeah, on the dot. But I really never don't like long movies, and Nolan knows, like, anytime a new one comes out, I always complain about it the entire time until we're there, and sometimes while we're there. It was the first movie of that length that I wasn't bored out of my mind, like, until maybe the 30 minutes left. Like, that was really it.
Yeah, I can get that. For those who don't know, Oppenheimer is a biopic starring Cillian Murphy, directed by Christopher Nolan, that's going through Robert Oppenheimer's life, him being considered the father of the atomic bomb. It is a good 3 hours long. It's told in 2 parts that intertwine with each other, one being the story of his whole life up to the invention of the atomic bomb, and then a series of press meetings and investigations afterward regarding multiple characters and their affiliation with the creation of the atomic bomb. And people have been, I guess, hyping up this movie a lot because obviously it was such a stacked cast. There had to have been at least 20 people in that movie that we would notice at any given time. It's like, why is he in this movie?
It was a lot. Like Josh from Drake and Josh was back there.
Jack Quaid, who is famous from The Hunger Games and The Boys.
Rami Malek,
Robert Downey Jr., Casey Affleck. I figured out who he played. He was that one general that Matt Damon was talking to Oppenheimer about. It's like, you're not supposed to talk to him.
Oh, ever. That guy.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know who Casey. I haven't seen Casey Affleck in such a long time. That's the reason why.
Looks a little okay, but this cast was just pretty beefy, and the only reason I can think of is just because there were so many new faces that you had to see and meet, and so it's easier to recognize a star versus a new nobody, I guess. If that makes sense.
You know what's my favorite part about knowing this cast and knowing how big it was on practical? Still half the budget of Indiana Jones 5.
Wow, really?
Yes, it was $120.
Dude, that's pretty insane.
I think CG plays a lot into price. I think also you just have to take the idea of IP is going to cost more, and I'm sure Harrison Ford was a big chunk of budget.
Well, the explosions were practical.
What'd you say?
Like, a lot of the explosions were practical.
They were practical. Yeah. I'm sure that I don't know, would that be more or less expensive than CGI?
Honestly, it'd probably be cheaper.
It probably would be cheaper. It just probably takes more time.
Yeah, it's just a lot of, it's more time, and planning, I think, is more of the thing, because you have to get everyone trained,
everybody safe.
Yeah, like that, versus CG. Okay, everyone stand there. Oh my God, it went off. All right, you're good. Wrap. All right. But I think this movie, one thing that I didn't enjoy about the beginning of the movie is that I felt I'd say the maybe first 30 to 45 minutes felt like I was being pushed through because so many things were going on and so many people were being introduced and set up, and it was just a lot of information coming at me at once, and it felt like I was being moved along too fast to actually really take it in and know what was happening and think about it, which I understand why they had to, but it was just, I just didn't like it at the beginning. And it was, we had that same kind of problem in Tetris almost too, where they were just pushing us through everybody just to get it over with.
I will say in Tetris, one thing that they do is everything is happening fast, but it's understandable. You don't get lost.
Yeah.
I felt a little lost at the beginning of this. It was almost a little bit more of an experimental opening. We see pieces moving around a lot. We don't know necessarily where we are in time. And then in between all of that, there's just like this beautiful footage of like what's supposed to be like quantum stuff. Like there's all these moving pieces going around, and there's like, and it looks beautiful, and I'm sure it was all practically shot. But the whole time I'm seeing it, I'm thinking,
I don't think that was practical.
I'm going insane. Maybe not, but it was a practical effect. I think
maybe they swung lights around. I guess
swung lights around.
I guess if you, you could probably do that.
I was just told that there was no CG in this movie.
There was no.
I think that in the Batman movies it was minimal, but I'm not sure if no. We can check that later. That's just what I had heard.
But so besides that first 45 minutes, I really enjoyed the pacing. I enjoyed the scene length because they always switched back to something that was not action packed at all. But I'll say more interesting, and something else is happening that alludes to something, or it either reveals a new fact. And like when they all run into the classroom, and I think Russia split the atom or something like that.
Yes, when Nazi Germany split the atom.
When Germany did, it was an immediate switch for everybody. Instead of like kind of thinking joyfully like what can we do next in science, it was like what do we need to do next to get ahead of the Russians, and everyone immediately just like turned a switch into military mode.
It was really cool because when you started off this story, it really is just talking about Oppenheimer like being obsessed with black holes. And it's because I think I read later that he was one of the first to hypothesize black holes,
and he's like a clumsy nerd who poisons his teacher, and then the next day wakes up like, oh my god, I can't kill my teacher, and he sprints back to get the apple.
He filled an apple full of cyanide and put it back on his teacher's desk, and because he was pissed at him that he made him clean up his lab table. The next day he's like, I can't let him eat it. He goes in there, and instead of his teacher about to eat it, it's some big scientist who like he's a big fan of. He saw speak later.
Niels Bohr.
Yeah, it was Bohr.
And he made one of the really famous like models of the atom, I think.
You're right. And then he's holding the apple, and the whole time he's staring at the apple, and then he just, right before he takes a bite out of it, he slaps it out of his hand into a trash can, and Bohr doesn't respond to it. He's like, okay, so are we gonna leave now? Are you gonna come to me to America? Instead of going, dickhead,
dude, my apple. It was so funny. Also, when he woke up to when he was like, oh my god, the apple, it showed footage of a horse eating an apple, which, just thinking about it now, it was so stupid.
Was that his dream?
I guess so. He was thinking about horses eating apples. He's like, oh my god.
We find we show his experience going to, what, did he go to Cambridge or Princeton?
Europe school.
Well, he went to Europe school and then he transferred to America.
Yeah, then he went to America. When he went to America, was that with Robert Downey Jr. or was that later on?
He became part of some Ivy League school that Robert Downey Jr. was head of later, after he had invented the atomic bomb.
Oh, is that where he had that classroom?
Yes, it's the one where he had the classroom with just one kid.
Okay, and that was Robert Downey Jr.'s place.
No, that's a completely different place. Robert Downey Jr., he only gets attached to the school with Robert Downey Jr. after he invents the bomb.
Okay.
As you can tell, there's nothing confusing about this movie.
Yeah, nothing at all. So constantly through this, we're bouncing between a black and white, like a black and white world that's in the, not present, but closer to the present.
Yeah, around the 1950s.
Yeah, 1950s, and it's some courthouse things, and what were they deciding in the courthouse?
Robert Downey Jr.'s character was getting appointed to some part of the executive cabinet, I believe in probably atomic energy.
Yeah.
And they were being confirmed by the Senate, but at the same time, the biggest problem that was on his plate was you sort of what took away the credentials of Robert Oppenheimer, who we credit as winning the war. And most of the Senate was like, okay, that's going to be a hard sell. So it's just revolving around Robert Downey Jr.'s character trying to get appointed.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, that makes sense. A lot of it is because of how serious it is and how many of these just people are all high-ranking and government people or just very, like, smart and technical.
Yeah.
This movie had a lot of big words that just got me lost. And in that 30 minutes of pushing me forward, it didn't help at all. Because I didn't know why I didn't know why that whole trial thing was going on until now. It kind of makes more sense, or really until the end of the movie I got it more.
I get that.
But either way, so we're constantly switching between it into from forward into the courthouse and back in time before the bomb.
Yeah.
And it gets, sometimes it's a little annoying because something is happening and it's exciting in one time and then you get pulled back to the other.
Yeah.
And so that is a little annoying, but I wouldn't want just like, okay, here's 20 minutes of this section, here's 20 minutes, I wouldn't want that either. So there's nothing you can win there.
Yeah. I still think it's really funny to see him, I guess, start out in America, because like the whole time we're sort of claiming that he was the one who brought quantum mechanics to America. He started off as like somewhat of an interesting person in Europe. He had one class at the American school he started teaching at, and it had one student starting up. And then slowly over time, just because he would keep teaching it, more and more people got attached to it. And I think it's very heartfelt to hear that. And then you're like, immediately after that, you go from he's so good at quantum mechanics to like you see on the board, hey students, we should really unionize.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a leap, because at first he was joking about the union and then he kind of looked at it.
Yeah.
But it was like there wasn't any importance put on it. He was just like, huh. And then he was just, I'm forming a union. What do you mean?
More than anything, this is one way that we can set up the fact that will be very important later about his communist ties. Unions were very tied up to unions were very tied up to communism in the 40s. And more than anything, we also see him around this time going to many meetings that were unofficial hanging points for the Communist Party of the United States.
No, they were
just official.
They were official. It was.
You're right.
It wasn't. There's a distinction made later on in the movie between Soviet communism and the communism, I guess, party, the Communist Party in America.
Yeah.
And there was a distinction they made later that became important, but we don't need to talk about that right now.
Yeah.
And so through this entire movie, there is constant paranoia, and constant questioning of anyone that's not American born and bred, and even some of those that are. And I think that does work really well. But one thing I told you after the movie is I wanted more propaganda. I wanted more like goofy, like Russian posters, like better be red than dead or dead than red. It's just, I wanted more. I wanted goofy posters of like a big man looming over the United States. But they wasn't there. But the paranoia was there, and you could constantly feel it in all the conversations. And a lot of the people, like that other scientist at that school that Oppenheimer's teaching at later on, another teacher, their professor that's next door, is really like grilling him on the union stuff. And he's like, dude, you need to stop. They don't even want me to tell you about the project because of all this communist stuff. And he's like, what?
Oppenheimer says, I think right after that, we all know what the project is.
Yeah.
We have been able to cause nuclear fission. You want to make a bomb out of it. That, I think, was one of my favorite parts, because we understood what it meant when they were just like, they can make a weapon out of this.
We all knew it was happening as soon as we walked into the movie, that they're going to be making a bomb.
No, I know that.
But I just mean, and so in knowing that, the movie takes it into account. They're not like, ooh, what is it? It's like, we know.
That is, I think, one of my favorite parts, that they do understand we have background knowledge of it. But at the same time, I think if you didn't know anything, you would still find yourself really enjoying this movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think if not like a kid, but someone that just isn't. I don't think you need to be a history person to enjoy this movie at all.
Yeah.
I think just on its own and alone, it's a very compelling story and interesting one that has a lot of different branches and just ties that gets fairly complicated, but in a interesting way, not exactly a convoluted way.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, though, we understand the whole context of this, basing it around World War II and the race to get the atom bomb before the other. But what's interesting is at no point are we shown the war. We are never really told what's happening in Europe at any point. We understand that people are fleeing. The only war they talk about, and I guess bigger, the only war we know is really happening was the Spanish Civil War, because that is also supposed to allude to communism a little bit. I believe the rebellion at the time was communist a little bit. But we just never learn anything about World War II.
The only thing that we ever hear is Oppie says that, like, in that Union scene, actually, he says, like, it's not your people over there being slaughtered, it's mine.
That's true.
And then it's a very strong, like, it just, the conversation stops for a minute, and it's just like, whoa. And then they continue after, but that's really the only time I can think of it ever happening, besides a twist that happens later on.
Yeah.
Which really wasn't very... later on, there's a scientist at the location where they're making this bomb.
In New Mexico.
In New Mexico, yeah. What was it called again? It was Los Alamos?
It was Los Alamos, yeah.
But he's long story short, he's a Soviet spy that's been taking data and, like, whatever, all their findings, and sending it back to Russia. And that was a really cool twist, and I liked it. But then they're like... okay, anyway, and then they just kept going, and I was like, I kind of wanted more, but okay.
In the time in Los Alamos, we learned that, and we're just like, oh, that sucks anyway, and then it only gets important once we go back to the hearings later, because then we understand, oh, this is like the reason Oppenheimer is going to be grilled. Yeah. One thing I want to add, I just remembered they all call him Oppie, because you said it.
Yeah. They call him Oppie.
Why not Robert? Why not Bob? Oppie?
Oppie. Yeah, okay. You know. It's your boy, Oppie.
Here to do another unbombing tutorial.
Hey guys, it's your boy Oppie. Today we're making nuclear fission.
Wait. Okay, speaking of that, or I don't want to jump too much, but
honestly, this movie is so long and a lot happens, but so little happens.
Yeah, it takes its time with each individual thing. But once we get to Los Alamos, we have this distinction between we're going to start doing the fission bomb, and then there's another guy that's like, well, what if we did a fusion bomb? Which is the difference between splitting an atom or combining atoms.
Yeah, so they wanted to collapse. Didn't they want to, collapse like a capsule or something at the start?
I believe,
they were trying to implode it?
Yeah, they were thinking that if they imploded it, it would cause more of an energy release, which would have a more devastating bomb. And they're thinking, that's cool, but we know fission is possible. We should start doing this fission bomb. Like, this other dude can keep looking up on fusion.
A lot... Through the entire movie, there's a lot happening, and it's written well, and the pacing's fantastic. But so much of it is, if you're trying to explain it, it's just... Well, then they were doing research, and they're like, no, that's not good. We should do this one. And they're like, okay. It is very interesting. And I don't want this to sound like I'm talking the movie down at all, because I'm really not. But it is so hard to really get everything that happened in this movie, like, into our podcast here, just because it is so packed, and the editing was so fast too.
The editing was really fast. Yeah, I will say that. Yeah, I didn't notice the editing. Though.
Yeah,
it was seamless.
It was very seamless, but it was just also like you were just going.
Yeah.
But I didn't dislike it all the time though, because like I said, a lot of movies now do sometimes struggle with just hanging around too much, because they want their character to feel like really whatever momentous or something cool.
Yeah.
And I like that they just kept going. It felt very grounded the entire time. It didn't feel like this is our guy, he is our main character. It was kind of about the whole operation.
It was about the whole operation, but this is something about sort of like production, or at least something I know. The script for this, at least the parts where we follow Oppenheimer through the first time from like him at school to inventing the bomb,
Mm.
was written in first person. It was written to where we're seeing everything from Oppenheimer's viewpoint, and actually it's like, I walked through the corridor is how they write it. What I found really interesting about that is you don't necessarily feel like it affects what you see. We can tell that it's following Oppenheimer, but at the same part, you see and care about all these other characters that walk into his life and are important to the story.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. This movie, and back to the starting bit there. The school at the beginning, I think it showed some characterization of who he was. It was like he's a little clumsy. He's kind of rebellious.
Yeah.
He hates whatever.
He hates field work. He loves doing theory.
Yeah. And then that kind of comes back then later. He kind of learns, like, you can't just work on theory, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole thing. But that thought was shit, so I'm going to take that out anyway. But
okay. One thing I think we haven't brought up yet, and I think it's out of fear. I think we haven't brought it up because we're afraid to talk about it. So, how'd you like Florence Pugh?
Who?
His mistress.
The boob lady who, like, when they were talking and they just, like, teleported to having sex upstairs.
Yeah, the boob lady.
Yeah, that was stupid. they were talking at the party and they were, like, kind of flirting, and then they were just fucking upstairs immediately. And then in the middle, she just turns around. She's like, "Oh my god, do you read these books?" That's
and he's
so
like,
crazy.
"Yeah, I read books." And then she picks up this the one Hindu book that's obviously later, and she puts it right on her bare chest, and she's like, "Read."
Yeah, she, like, leans into him, like, read it out loud. And he just says the thing. I am Death Destroyer or something.
Yeah, I have become Death Destroyer of Worlds.
Yeah.
Probably the most famous quote from him.
And that's, like, the whole marketing quote that's at the beginning. It's like it's a bunch, and then then the scene ends after he says it. The quote, that was it. The whole point was him to say the funny.
And then he comes back to her later, while he's at Los Alamos trying to make the bomb, and he goes and cheats on his wife because she's having a mental health problem, and
his wife is heavily drinking constantly.
Yeah.
With their, like, to the point of ignoring their newborn son when he's, like, crying, sobbing.
Yeah. Were we laughing at that part? I think we were, because, like,
Probably.
because he just comes home and she just starts, like, making out with him, and he's like, "Hey, the baby's crying. Shouldn't we, like, do something about that?" And she says, "What do you think I've been doing?
I've been doing it all this day."
What if I'm tired of doing it?"
And then she walks away, and he just looks up around the house like, oh my god.
Oh my god.
He's constantly looks like he's just amazed, and
they had to get okay. So the timeline of events: he met his wife Kitty while she was married to another man who she didn't want to be married to. They have sex. She gets pregnant. She tells the guy. They divorce. Oppenheimer marries Kitty. They have the baby, and she hates it. So they move to Los Alamos, and she's not having the best time with raising the kid. Well, no, after that, she gives the kid to their friends.
Yeah, they get, after that breakdown, Oppie takes them over and gives it to his friends, who aren't they communists?
Those are the people they know from the communist meetings with his brother.
No, weren't they, like, Soviets?
Oh my gosh!
Because later
was that
they were
the spy.
No, that I'm not the spy, but I'm pretty sure they were because remember he was grilling him in the kitchen about like, now we could get some files, under the government's nose, and he's like,
yeah.
And then it cuts back to later than the trials at the very end of the movie.
Yeah.
They're like, so why didn't you report that to the government? That guy was obviously committing treason.
So what you're referring to is he has a communist friend who he's had connections to, and there's been no talk between them about the fact that he's working on the atomic bomb, but his friend knows, because most of the scientific community knows, and he says, "Hey, if we were to give information to the Soviets about this nuclear bomb, we would make it not a monopoly, and we would make it to where there isn't one superpower with the weapon to destroy hundreds of thousands. We could make a ceasefire." And Oppenheimer's like, yeah, but that's treason.
Yeah, he's
and
like,
then he
isn't
says,
that
yeah,
treason?
I know. That's probably not him being a Soviet. At least I didn't take it that way.
I guess that's what they were claiming at the very end. That's what
Maybe.
The Office was saying.
Okay. He was
Maybe.
probably...
I was confused. But.
He probably has communist loyalty to the Soviet
Well, he was
Union,
in the communist club.
He was in the
yeah.
Communist Party of the United States.
He probably had a loyalty card.
He was a card-carrying member.
Yeah, that was a thing.
That was a thing. I mean, that's still a thing nowadays. You can have a Democratic Party card or a Republican Party card.
Really?
Yeah.
What virgins?
Pull it
dude?
out like certification.
Hey, buddy, look who you're talking to. I'm a registered Democrat. Watch it. What is that?
I love that idea. Do you know who you're talking to?
Hey, you know who I am?
Registered Democrat. I could primary you out of office.
Yeah, watch it, buddy. Independent. All right?
You can't sign up to be independent.
No, it's my card. I just make it. It's like crayons.
Speaking of card-carrying member, there's at some point in the speech where it comes to Kitty Oppenheimer, who also had communist ties, and she's being interrogated to see how Oppenheimer was related to the Communist Party. And what was it? This was probably one of the best speeches she had. She's like, were you a card-carrying member? And she's like, I forgot. It was 16 years ago. Yeah. Oh, sorry, 17 years ago.
No,
18 years ago. And it's supposed to be just like this big moment where she's girl bossing her way out of being a treason.
Yeah, of being confirmed as a communist.
Yeah.
And where she just dances around it, and every time she answers every other question flawlessly, and anytime he's like, but what about anytime he says, do you have a communist card, she's like, what card?
I forgot. And
then she's like, but wouldn't you have to order it and send them through the mail? And she's like, yes.
Probably.
Yeah. It's like all stuff like that. So it's just like
she really had a backbone that Oppenheimer didn't, because we never saw Oppenheimer get mad. There's all those points where like people are obviously backstabbing him when it comes to these trials.
He never breaks down, and he never has a really big explosion of emotion that I can remember.
Well, there's one point, and that's when Florence Pugh's character ends up killing herself back in Chicago.
Yeah.
And he gets that over the phone, and he breaks down, and he's crying behind this rock or something.
Yeah,
and
that
his
was
wife
stupid.
Is like, what?
That scene was stupid. Oh my god! Like, okay, Kitty like rides out on a horse, and she finds his horse because he likes New Mexico.
Yeah,
and he lives there. And they finds his horse, and then he's just in the fetal position, sobbing, covered in dirt, in a full suit, next to this big rock in the middle of the desert. And it's just so it looks so stupid.
I would understand him reacting that way. What I love is, and this broke me. I lost my shit at this in the theater. You saw me. He tells his wife, like, oh, I cheated on you, and this girl really needed me, and she's dead now. And she just looks at him and goes, I don't care if she's dead. Did you cheat on me? Are you on... This doesn't excuse any... Well,
I didn't catch that.
She said, "This. I don't care what happened. This doesn't excuse what you did." Something like that. And, like, it sort of just feels like she doesn't care at all. And I understand that. I would have very mixed feelings if someone told me, I cheated on you and now she's dead.
Oh, okay. In that exact point in the movie, one big complaint I have is the music was too damn loud.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I didn't know what she said. Because I turned to you and I'm like, what did she say? And then you said it, but then I couldn't hear you because the music next to our seats was too loud anyway, so I couldn't hear what you were saying. And so I didn't catch that at all. That makes a lot of sense.
It's a Christopher Nolan movie. One thing he's really well known for is having a large dynamic range. And one thing about it is the only thing that doesn't have dynamic range is the music, which is always loud. He recently switched over to his new composer, Ludwig. He had been with Hans Zimmer before that on every one of his projects. That was a good one, Nick. A real comedic genius. He's with Ludwig now, who is a famous rap composer before this. He did stuff with Childish Gambino. He was on Tenet. I really love the soundtrack of Tenet. This soundtrack is also really good, but it is also very loud. It's not as loud as Tenet, though. He did learn from Tenet.
I've never seen Tenet.
That was such a good job.
Yeah, you're welcome. I've never seen Tenet, though.
Tenet's okay.
We could... I remember people talking about it a lot when it came out.
Yeah.
Was it good?
I liked it a lot. I get how people say it's confusing. I watched it the second time and I understood everything perfectly. Music was loud. The effects were incredible to watch. I was late to a film festival and I was considered ineligible because I watched that movie instead of submitting the final product. That was really funny.
What do you, with this movie, what's your biggest complaint? What do you want to see that you wanted better? Or improved, that you would do differently, let's say.
Thinking about it now, I do think that we should have seen maybe some parts of the war. More importantly, we should have probably have seen Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We never got to. We understood what happens, obviously. We hear it on the radio. And maybe that's more important to see.
There's sorry to cut you off. There's a whole segment with President Truman where Oppenheimer is meeting with Truman after the bomb was made and it was dropped. And Oppenheimer wanted to... Did he want to just get rid of all nuclear arms? Or
he wanted to dissuade him from stocking up on nuclear bombs. More importantly, to stop looking into the hydrogen bomb, to stop looking into the fusion bomb.
Oh, yeah, because, then they said, they were like, this is the man that made it, but then as soon as it's over, now he's, like, the number one proponent against them.
Yes.
And it was a really, first of all, the actor that played President Truman, I hate him, I hate that guy, he's stupid.
First thing you said to me when you...
He's the bad guy from the Book of Eli, I don't know his name, I don't care, I hate him, he's stupid. But Truman basically just tells him, shut up.
Oppenheimer just basically asks, Mr. Truman, I built this bomb that killed 200,000 people. I feel like I have blood on my hands. And do you want to see what happens next?
Then I forget exactly what he says, but he basically says, get out of my office, and then he's like, someone get that crybaby out of here. And then they close the door on him.
He hands him a napkin.
Oh, yeah.
And he has like a baby face, like,
his little
handkerchief. Cry?
Yeah, like, get this crybaby out of here. It's so funny, dude. Oh, my God. Thank you, President Truman.
Oh, it was such a funny bit. Oh, dude. I'm now realizing why they wouldn't show any aspects of World War II and why they wouldn't show aspects of Hiroshima. I forgot. And I said this myself. It's first person. It's a first person story.
That's a good point. He didn't see it, so he wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand that now in context.
Is it written in first person because it's like we're supposed to be reading we're supposed to be following his report at the end of the movie to those people? Because he does a whole life account from like schooling to the start. Because remember, they're like, why'd you go to America then? You like, whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed... Maybe that is it. Maybe it's just his first-person account of what was happening.
And that
as
helps
the
with the reports,
made.
yeah.
Yeah. And
it's also because it follows the book American Prometheus, which is his... I don't know if it's a biography. I don't know if it's autobiography.
It's a book. Yeah, it's a book about making the bomb. But it's an Oppenheimer book. And that's why the cover... Isn't that the man with the cigar in his mouth? Or cigarette?
Yes,
Isn't
the promotional photo that had come out for a while was Cillian Murphy playing Oppenheimer with a cigarette in his mouth and his little top hat, and that was the front cover for that.
Yeah, that was the front cover for that book.
Do you have any complaints about this movie you would change? Music, runtime, I know those are some big things.
Honestly, the runtime, after watching the movie, I really don't have any complaints about it because I don't like long movies that long. I understand why they can be better and you can tell more story, but I just personally don't like them more.
Yeah.
I don't prefer them. But this movie, I think, did it well. It kept my interest, and it was interesting. It was just entertaining the whole time. Yeah. And I really wasn't. I wasn't antsy and ready to leave. I enjoyed the ending, and I think it wrapped up nicely in a bow. Yeah. But honestly, just the music and maybe some of the pacing at the beginning. I wouldn't have been mad if some of the school stuff was left out. Yeah, really, just the very beginning school stuff. I understand if it was gone, I wouldn't be mad.
I really like the school stuff simply because seeing the black hole stuff. I like knowing more about the character outside of the bomb, and it might just be because I was also big into astronomy at some point, so it was cool to read up on how we discovered black holes, where it was really just him being like, well, as a star gets denser, what's gonna happen?
Yeah, it was a good lead into what they were doing later. Yeah, it worked well. I just don't. I think if it wasn't there, the story itself wouldn't suffer, but it doesn't hurt it being there at all.
You're right. And then I think one of the last things we really have to talk about is Trinity. Trinity being the first test of an atomic bomb in Los Alamos. It was, I think, one of the best uses of buildup I have ever seen. There was a point where like I was like, oh my god, it's actually gonna happen, and there was some button sound went off where it goes beep. And I shook. I thought that was it happening, and I was really tense, and it jump scared me.
Yeah, I remember. I felt you. I felt you jump in the chair.
I was tense.
It was a very tense moment, and Drake and Josh, man, was sitting on the kill switch.
He was the detonator,
and everyone was just passed out with these like the little squares that's inside of a welding helmet, like that double pane glass or whatever it is.
They had like little sunglasses.
Yeah, and that one guy that was just in his car.
Yeah, Jack Quaid.
Jack Quaid.
Jack Quaid was in his car watching it sort of like a drive-in movie theater, and there was a dude right next to him in a lawn chair who covered himself in like anti-radiation cream, and that was really funny to see. That was the dude that ratted out Oppenheimer later, that his wife wouldn't shake hands with.
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah, and then we see that it's like miles away, the Trinity bomb that they have there. They've lined it up, and it was raining right before then. And that added so much to it.
Yeah, it
was such a stressful part.
Because if it didn't... So many of them and a lot of army officials and scientists wanted to just do it anyway and just start. And the reason they didn't want to is because all that uranium and like however much...
radiation.
Ton of money it would be... Not even radiation. It's just all that uranium we have up there is just wasted and gone, and then we need to get that again.
You're right.
And that was the whole thing, is why we can only do this kind of once.
And especially because they were trying to get it done right before they went to a peace summit with Stalin, so that they can tell the Soviets we have a bomb.
They were on a hard time limit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it kind of ties back into Oppenheimer living in New Mexico for a ton of time. And he's like, it'll break right before dawn, watch. And everyone's okay.
Because he knows how the weather in New Mexico works.
And then he has a little moment with the general and in the shack and everything. Which is, I think that was really nice. When they were just, it was nothing but the two of them just talking. The one-on-one scenes, I think, are really, really strong in this movie. Just when it's just two people having a conversation. And in all of those, there was nothing else going on besides them standing there and talking. They weren't going anywhere. They weren't doing anything while they were talking. They were just having a conversation. And I think if the words alone of what they're saying is interesting enough for us to want to pay attention, I think that's a great just like show of how good the writing is in this movie.
Absolutely. And when the bomb goes off, the rain has died. It's right before dawn, so it's still pitch dark. We see the bomb go off, and you can tell it's all practical. It was one of the most beautiful things I had literally seen.
It was really, really well done. One thing I really enjoyed about the bomb going off is that every time in movies, whenever there's some huge explosion or something, there's always a high-pitched ring or something, because it's their ears ringing.
Yeah.
In this, it was completely dead silent the entire time the bomb went off, and it was definitely weird in the theater. Yeah. It was strange.
There was some guy who went, "Oh,"
yeah,
right as it was happening.
That was pretty funny.
Very audible.
But it was I enjoyed that so much more, and just fun. You really feel just the impact of like understanding at that point, just at that moment we had switched into the nuclear age at that point. And it's incredibly powerful, and it's just quiet, and the fact that they can do that with pure silence is amazing, and just all you hear is breathing and a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that was my favorite bit, is just that the audio was completely gone.
I can't imagine anybody has a favorite bit other than that.
It's
just why the movie was made.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan said, "I will do a practical bomb, you will love it." And people were like, "Sure, here's $100 million."
I really hope they make or in like the DVD release they have a lot of behind the scenes stuff, because they have to. They have to. That would
be probably the best behind the scenes footage ever.
I'm definitely gonna be buying this on like Blu-ray after though.
I told you this earlier, but they did 3 days of doing this bomb to get multiple footage of it, and on each day they had a lot of the actors on. And on one of the day, I think it was the third day, Robert Downey Jr. was allowed on. He's nowhere near this. We are only introduced to the character afterwards. Sorry, my boss is calling me. I'll call him back later. he isn't introduced until after the bomb is off, so he's never on set for this, but they allowed him on just to see it, so he understands the importance of it. And Robert Downey Jr. brought an ice cream truck with him when he was doing this. I guess just because he's like, you know what, if we're gonna be watching this giant bomb, I'm gonna get some ice cream with it.
Yeah. Good for him, man. What a cool guy. And when we were talking about this before, do you think the old Robert Downey Jr. leaks out every once in a while?
Yeah, he had asked me, do you think 90s Robert Downey Jr. is ever like present in Robert Downey Jr.'s life?
It's got to be in there somewhere.
You know what I'm thinking?
It's like Animal in like that Muppets movie where he's like all calm. It's got to be like that.
No drumming. I know.
Yeah, like that. It's got to be exactly like that. That's
Jack
what I
Black
picture.
is his sponsor.
Yeah, and Jack Black is Robert Downey Jr.'s sponsor. That part's real, but
I think it's a party trick. I think it's like, hey, you guys want to see something? And like he just
you guys want to see something crazy?
And then like he does sort of like a magician's trick where like a small baggie of Coke drops from his hand. They're like, whoa!
And I'll make this Coke disappear. Yeah, you're probably right.
Somebody said, or Robert Downey Jr. said, this is the best movie he's ever been in. That goes against obviously anything he's been in the MCU, Zodiac, which most people consider his best movie, and then Doolittle. Do you think this is true? Do you think this is better than Doolittle?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. Not because of this movie. I just study Doolittle in my spare time. Today we're on frame 289. But Robert Downey Jr., I think this is his best just movie, just for his acting chops overall. Like the MCU movies, they're good, but it's not Robert Downey Jr. as much. After Iron Man, the Avengers movies, it's more just the character of Iron Man than Robert Downey Jr. This, I think he really shows his skill. That's really it. He just does incredibly well in this movie, I think.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say about it, or do you want to rate this?
I think I'm ready to rate it.
Okay. What would your rating be?
I think overall this movie, I'm gonna give it a 4.5. Really, the only reason I don't give it a 5 is just because I don't like giving movies a 5. Because what is like a 5-star movie?
Yeah, I feel like if knowing how you feel, I think 4.5 is good.
Yeah,
for you.
But I really enjoyed this movie, and I was shocked how much I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Personally, I would give this a 4 stars, but I think 4.5 might be where I'm leaning at, having heard what you said. Because I went in it with a 4 thinking this is what I usually give classic movies that I'll probably be thinking about for a little bit, but I probably wouldn't consider some of my favorites. Remembering all of this again sort of has realized how much I enjoyed this movie, and I legitimately think that out of literally just seeing the Trinity test, this might be something that I think about forever. It was such a good effect.
It was being a 3-hour movie and us remembering that much detail is pretty incredible.
There's one more thing we didn't talk about. Albert Einstein. That was probably the incredible way to end this.
I didn't realize he was Albert Einstein at first. I thought it was just like some janitor. I'm gonna be real. I was like, who the fuck is this guy?
You just see.
It was some old man.
What janitors do you know that are contemplating next to a pond?
It was just an old man looking at a pond, and I'm like, oh, a groundskeeper. That was my first thought.
Albert Einstein happens a lot through this. Mostly never to help on the project, but simply to talk about the moral tendencies of the bomb. They talk about, there's one part where they go up to Einstein during the invention of the bomb. They're like, hey, we had this calculation that might show that if we set off the bomb, the entire world will be destroyed by a chain reaction of fission. And Albert Einstein's like, well, that's not good. And then he goes away.
He's like, man, don't do that.
Don't do that. And then we're alluded to the fact that he had one more talk with Albert Einstein throughout the movie, something that Robert Downey Jr. is really pissed at because he thinks that like Oppenheimer was talking to Albert Einstein about how much he hated him. But when we finally find out what they were talking about, it's 2 things. It's one, Oppenheimer talks about how he feels like he's being attacked for not talking about the bomb. And Albert Einstein goes, they will award you, but they are rewarding themselves for funding you. You are not going to be given the credit you deserve. And then Oppenheimer gives the last line of the movie, which was by far the best way you could end this, where he goes, I talked to you earlier about how I thought if we set off this bomb, the world would end. And I think that is true. I think I did that. Because he has horrible regret about making this bomb and knowing that humanity could destroy themselves with it.
Immediately after that, though, it has a bunch of shots of like modern day warheads and stuff, and like what it would look like if they all landed at the Earth. And I thought that was really stupid. It felt like this is what we mean. We mean this. The nukes now. That felt like stupid. Look, see, that's what I mean. I got it. I understood the message.
I
didn't like that. I didn't like that. It was pretty, but I didn't like that end bit.
It was really pretty. That's why I liked it. And this is a stupid thought, but I was thinking it a lot, where I felt as if this was a movie that could almost be designed to be a time artifact, something that you look at earlier to understand tension, or more importantly, I don't know why this was going through my head, something that could be sent out on one of those like probe things that gets sent out in the space, where it's like, here's part of human culture for any aliens who see it.
Yeah, I hope they can play MP4s. That'd be bad if they can't, dude. That'd be fucked.
Aliens invent Blu-ray player to specific specifications, only to watch Oppenheimer.
That's a great question. If we send the movies and stuff, what format are we sending?
They'd probably send it in every format we can. VHS, and I imagine with each one they had detailed instructions.
I think they gave him the one where they sent like a VHS. I think they gave him a VHS player.
They sent him a laser disc.
They did. They just said.
Oh yeah, they could totally just send a DVD player with them, and then just have some sort of specification. This needs energy.
They could just put a PlayStation in there. Yeah, they'd be fine. Anyway,
So yeah.
Yeah. So now I think we're gonna just pivot over to news.
Some news.
So first off, Nolan, do you have anything else that it's happening right now that you want to talk about?
Well, San Diego Comic-Con is happening right around here, and some news has come out of this from DC Studios. They've released some more animated movie titles. They are doing a Crisis on Infinite Earths animated movie, along with a Watchmen animated movie. Obviously, we don't need a Watchmen animated movie. We have one live action movie that has 3 cuts that you can buy. We have so many. We have the original comics. We have so many spin-off comics. We have a TV show that was written for it that won a ton of Emmys. Mm-hmm. We don't need more Watchmen content.
It's very saturated.
For one story too. For 12 issues, we have that much content.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Invincible Season 2 has been given its first trailer. They released a promo short film for it about Adam Eve, and regarding to that, there's a lot of talk about maybe Spider-Man being introduced into it. This season's going to be talking about multiverse things. If you look at where they're taking inspiration from in the comics, the voice actor for Spectacular Spider-Man, Josh Keaton, is attached to this. There was at some point a teaser image that showed one of the issues of Invincible and Spider-Man. Some people are thinking this is going to happen, especially since Sony has the rights to television and they've been doing deals with Amazon regarding Spider-Man. I don't think it's going to happen. That's all the nerd stuff from Comic-Con I really got to know. Besides that, the writer's strike and the actor strike are still happening. People believe that Dune 2 will be delayed. They have finished filming, but with the writer's strike, they're not allowed to do any ADR or any voiceovers that have to be written along with.
Or like improvisation stuff. Like Ryan Reynolds can't do any of that.
Yeah, that's why Deadpool is gone.
One thing I was thinking about is, so you know how Ryan Reynolds owns Mint Mobile, right?
He owns. Oh yeah, that's
he
why he
owns
does all
Mint
the
Mobile,
ads.
and he's the spokesperson for Mint Mobile. Do you think he can still make? Do you think he would be able to do that? Because it's his own thing.
Well, here's the thing. There are a lot of loopholes that have been added into these. Like a writer can't do any promotional work during the writer's strike, but writer-directors can, because the Directors Guild has a deal with the studio. So as a director, you can go and promote things. You just have to, I guess, not talk about your writing, or maybe it really doesn't matter because you're acting more in capacity as a director. I would imagine that for Ryan Reynolds, I don't know if... I imagine he could say something like, no, I'm talking as the CEO. I'm not talking as an actor. That's probably the angle that he would take to it.
Probably. That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, the writer's strike's still going on. That's all still happening. There's nothing really new that's happened since last week.
One notable thing is A24 is now void of any of the restrictions of the Screen Actors Guild strike, because they have met all of the demands that the Screen Actors Guild asked for. Mm-hmm. So A24 projects are still in production.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, awesome. Screen Actors Guild also has a lot of waivers for rules for indie production. So we're going to see probably a lot more indie production happen during this, since it's one of the few things that will be allowed to happen. And honestly, that might be something that the industry needs right now, because we're going to have a breakaway from all this IP and big industry. We'll get low budget movies that can be sent to theaters, and it might be healthy for us to take a break from all of these big budget things to see new content.
Yeah, I think a good thing about right now the movie industry is blockbusters and like whatever multi-million dollar films. I think if we tone it down a bit and go to smaller budget films, then our expectations for this needs to make 100 billion in 4 weeks or else we're never doing it again will go away a little bit. But the only news I really have to talk about is Johnny Depp recently passed out in his hotel room while he was on tour. It was a music tour for like his band.
Do we know why yet? Because I still think it's...
I have the news article up here.
Okay.
So,
is it drugs? I'm putting money on that it's drugs.
So it's right here. It says, turns out Johnny was overexcited or something, and his condition was so bad they had to call for medical help. What is that?
He
dude?
was giddy. He was giddy.
He got a little anxious. He just got overexcited. He peed himself a little. What is that, dude?
He got the zoomy.
But I hope he's okay.
Yeah, I hope he's okay. We've had these sort of incidents pretty often. We had Jeremy Renner, who had a bad incident with a snowplow. That was in winter. Jamie Foxx, you know about his condition?
Oh yeah. He didn't every bone in his arm break or something?
Something like that. I know he passed. I know he was hospitalized for a while, and nobody knew what his condition was.
He had because they were. Both of his arms were broken. They're saying it wouldn't be too much of a problem because they CG his arms anyway as Hawkeye.
Oh,
for,
Jeremy Renner.
Stuff.
Yeah,
for Jeremy Renner.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, that was a really bad snowmobile accident. It was the kind of accident where like he was so beaten that his face was swollen to the point where it didn't look like Jeremy Renner.
Yeah, I'm glad he's doing better. And then Jamie Foxx, I think, is doing better. He was on the brink of death.
He had a stroke. Yeah.
It was a stroke. That's what it was. I'm glad he's doing better. It's going to be a while until he starts acting again for sure.
Is he like... Was there any damage from the stroke at all? Do we know yet?
I don't know. The family has been saying, we really don't want to be releasing information. We want to be having this to ourselves. They're at least vocal on that. And I think it's good for you to have contact with the press to say, please just let us be with our family.
But I mean, I hope he's okay.
I hope he's okay too.
That's going to be sad if he's if he's changed at all in any
a new show of his is releasing with John Bodega in it. I think it's called They Cloned Tyrone. I've heard great reviews of it so far.
On like what service?
I think it was Amazon Prime. I'll have to check though. If anybody's interested, it should be coming out relatively soon. Just look up They Cloned Tyrone. I've heard good things from it. I just need to know what it's about. Okay, I think that's it.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to WAM.
Yeah. We'll see you next week, which should be Barbie.
Yeah. It should be the next episode.
Okay.
Thank y'all for listening.
See ya.
Bye.